Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students and audience, in this video lecture we will learn about determining risk status of breeds. We will talk little about on growth rate of a population or growth trend of a population. For example, today we have 250 animals breeding females of a breed, and their growth rate per year is 1.21. So we can easily predict after 5 years there will be 648 animals. So their growth trend is positive. Similarly, if we have 1000 animals breeding females, their growth rate per year is 0.92. So after 5 years, using this formula, nt is equal to n0 multiplied by r into t, where r is growth rate per year, n0 is base population, and t is number of years. So after 5 years we will get 659 animals, and this trend is negative. Similarly, if we have 2000 base population breeding females, multiplicative growth rate is even less, 0.8. So they will end up at 655 breeding females after 5 years. This growth rate is also negative. So this gives us a bit of idea how a population growth trend is calculated. Similarly, next term is effective population size. It is the number of breeding animals in a population. So as opposed to total animals, it may include kids, very young animals, very old animals. They would be excluded from this. So this is only the number of breeding animals in the population. How can we calculate effective population size? Wright has given us a formula. Ne is equal to 4 into Nm multiplied by Nf divided by Nm plus Nf, where Nm is the number of breeding males, Nf is the number of breeding females. For instance, population A has 5 breeding males, 995 breeding females, making a total of 1000 breeding animals, and their NE turns out to be 19.9. For a population B, we have 20 breeding males, 980 breeding females, and their effective population size is 78. So the more balanced sex ratio we have, the more effective population size value we would get. So this is effective population size, and another term is rate of inbreeding per generation. Once we have got effective population size NE, we can easily calculate rate of inbreeding per generation, which is delta F is equal to 1 over 2 NE. So in case of previous two populations, for population A, delta 4F will be 4 times greater than population B, because population A has very few number of breeding males, although both populations have same number of breeding animals. So sex ratio has important role in playing determining the rate of inbreeding and effective population size. We have a few assumptions about NE. For example, the population should be in random mating, there should be no selection, no variance in the number of progeny produced by each breeding animal. So now what turns out to be the criteria of risk status is there are two things. One is demographic, number of breeding females, and the other one is genetic criteria, which is effective population size or rate of inbreeding. So who will determine the risk? It is usually a national level body. For example, it could be National Advisory Committee for Animal Genetic Resource. These technical guys would determine the risk status of every breed. We can get data from various sources, for example, total population size or total number of breeding females, registered or unregistered, of that breed. Similarly, total number of breeding males, percentage of females being used for pure breeding as opposed to crossbreeding, because crossbreeding does not contribute anything to the renewal of the population. And we can get a trend of population size classified as stable, decreasing or increasing, which we talked about in the first slide. And presence of a conservation program and or population maintained by commercial companies or institutions under strict control. So these kind of data we need to determine the risk status of any breed. The first category is the most dangerous one, which is extinct. It means we do not have any breeding male or female of that breed, and we do not have sufficient cryoconserved genetic material which can be used for reconstitution of that breed. Next category is cryoconserved only. Here we still do not have any living male or female animal remaining, but we have sufficient cryoconserved genetic material to allow for reconstitution of a breed. So the ability to reconstitute would be determined by the amount and type of germplasm. It could be ova, embryos, and sperms or somatic cells. Next category is critical. If the total number of breeding females is less than or equal to 100, 300 for species with low reproductive capacity, and overall population size is less than or equal to 80, or overall population size is less than or equal to 120, and the population trend is stable or decreasing, and here it should be increasing. And the thing which I would suggest is delta F, which is 3% or greater. So a population is in critical condition if its delta F is 3% or greater, which is calculated through effective population size, and if the breeding females are less than or equal to 100. In both cases, if population trend is unknown, we will assume it to be stable, and if we have an active conservation program, we can add a word maintained, critical maintained, for our reporting purposes. Next category is endangered. It is less severe than critical. Here we have more than 100 breeding females and less than or equal to 1,000 females. So their category is 100 to 1,000. For less reproductive, it should be 300 to 3,000. And you can see delta F here should be between 1 and 3%. So if our delta F is between 1 and 3%, we will categorize it as endangered. And once again, population trend is unknown, then we will assume it to be stable. And endangered breeds will be assigned the subcategory of endangered maintained. Effective conservation program does exist. Next category is vulnerable. Here we have total number of breeding females between 1,000 and 2,000, and 3,600 for low reproductive capacity animals. And here you can see the delta F should be between 0.5 and 1%, which is basically safe range. So vulnerable is less severe than endangered. Here we have more than 1,000 breeding females, and delta F is between 0.15 and 1. And unreported population are assumed to be stable. And next category is not at risk. If a population is not in the above categories, for example endangered, critical, and vulnerable, then we can categorize it as not at risk. Another status is unknown. If we do not know anything about that population or breed, then we will write against it as unknown. This is very alarming situation, and we immediately need a population survey to see if the breed is critical, endangered, vulnerable, or not at risk. For your attention, and looking forward for